I was given a glass of Kool-Aid, and so were the other children. This Kool-Aid was spiked with LSD. It was horrible.
In all of human history, there exist times that reveal the depths to which humanity can sink in the name of science and curiosity. In this video, we're going to be taking a look at some of the worst human experiments ever conducted in the history of science. From mind control to biological wars, these experiments tell the darkest corners of human curiosity. Kicking off our list, we have the MKUltra project. From 1953 to 1967, the CIA conducted a program known as Project MKUltra, which aimed to explore the possibilities of mind control and brainwashing. Their goal was to find ways to confuse and disorient enemies, hypnotize individuals, and even cause amnesia. Shockingly, many of these experiments were carried out on people from lower socioeconomic backgrounds. Some of the tests involved giving the victims controlled substances, and tragically, in some cases, this led to the demise of individuals involved. This research spanned across 86 different universities and institutions, all working towards the same goal by using morally questionable methods.
The mission at Edgewood was to find a drug that would produce incapacitation to decrease the enemy's ability to perform without killing them.
Some experiments involved electroshock, heroin, sodium pentothal, and a mix of barbiturates and amphetamines. The result often left the individuals in a state of mindless babbling. Next is Project Aversion.
I said to the doctor, I want out. I volunteered in, I want out. He said, no. First of all, we have to put the electrodes on your penis. If you get an erection over these men, then we will stop the erection by hitting you with a shot.
During South Africa's separation era, a dark chapter known as the Aversion Project took place. This project targeted a specific group who believed to be curable. They were people like substance abusers or homosexuals within the South African Defense Forces. These individuals were subjected to a series of inhumane medical experiments and torture in an attempt to cure them. Dr. Aubrey Levin was the leader of this aversion therapy, which involved electroshock, hormone therapy, and even chemical alteration on known homosexual soldiers. Subjects were forced to view explicit images of the same gender, then shocked until their bodies could endure no more, only to be shown explicit images of the opposite gender. When faced criticism, Levin argued that these treatments could be applied to other groups, such as substance addicts. In 2014, Levin was sentenced to 5 years in prison for abusing patients over the years. The Aversion Project stands as a horrifying example of the abuses that occurred during that era.
Answer. Wrong. 150 volts. Answer, horse.
Experiment, that's all. Get me out of here.
In 1963, Stanley Milgram conducted an experiment known as the Milgram Shock Experiment. His goal was to understand the extent of human obedience, inspired by the claims of the Nazis during World War II, who argued that they were merely following orders. In this experiment, 40 participants were gathered and given the task of administering electric shocks to a third party whenever the person answered a question incorrectly. However, this third party was actually an actor and no real harm was being done. The catch was that the subjects believed they were delivering shocks of up to 450 volts, especially because the victim was a convincing actor who pleaded for mercy. What's striking is that although 35% of the participants stopped when the voltage reached its maximum, all 40 subjects initially followed Milgram's instructions and went as far as 300 volts. Although no physical harm occurred, Milgram's experiment has drawn criticism for the mental distress it caused the participants, who felt compelled to follow Milgram's directives despite their personal discomforts.
The victim, according to plan, provided many wrong answers. His verbal responses were standardized on tape, and each protest was coordinated to a particular voltage level on the shock generator.
And next we have yet another tale of World War II abuse. So during World War II,
Joseph Mengele, also known as the Angel of Death. He was a notorious Nazi doctor who conducted inhumane medical experiments on prisoners during the Holocaust.
All right, tonight in devastating detail, twin brothers described to our Dana Arshan the experiments performed on them by Mengele's team.
The German physician Joseph Mengele, infamously known as the Angel of Death, conducted brutal and inhumane experiments with some of the most disturbing involving twins. His actions were subjected to a nightmarish version of Dr. Frankenstein's experiments. Mengele subjected twins to unimaginable horrors, and among his victims were Eva and Miriam, twin sisters who miraculously survived his cruel experiments. He even attempted to create Siamese twins by connecting the blood vessels and organs of some twins, turning them into grotesque abominations. But Mengele's cruelty didn't stop there. He injected hundreds of pairs of twins with Noma disease, a horrific bacterial infection, and introduced unknown substances into the hearts of some twins only to dissect them after their deaths. These inhumane experiments carried out by Mengele remain a dark and haunting chapter in the history of World War II, testifying to the depths of cruelty and ethical violations during that period. At number 4, we have the experiments of Guatemalans.
Between 1946 and 1948, more than 1,500 people in Guatemala were part of an experiment by American doctors infected with syphilis. An investigation by the government of Guatemala says this was done to test the effectiveness of penicillin.
In the 1940s, a deeply troubling episode known as the Guatemalan experiments occurred, which led to a formal apology from Secretary of State Hillary Clinton to the nation of Guatemala in October of 2010. This apology was for a scary outbreak of gonorrhea and syphilis that was intentionally introduced into the Guatemalan population as part of a study aimed at finding ways to prevent the spread of these diseases among the U.S. military. The United States dispatched Dr. John Charles Cutler from the Public Health Service to intentionally infect members of the Guatemalan military with these diseases. When this proved successful, Cutler extended his experiments to other hospitals where he continued to spread syphilis and gonorrhea. By the time Cutler's experiments concluded, more than 1,300 subjects had been infected, with only 678 of them receiving follow-up treatments. The Stanford prison experiment was conducted by psychologist Philip Zimbardo, who aimed to study the impact of assigned social roles on a person's behavior. In this experiment, a simulated...
I had really thought that I was incapable of this kind of behavior. I was surprised, I was dismayed to find out that I could really be a...
Prison was created in the basement of Stanford University's psychology building in solitary confinement. 21 male students were assigned to either the role of the prisoner or a guard. The experiment began with the prisoners being unexpectedly arrested at their homes, taken through a booking process, and then held in the basement prison. Shockingly, just a few hours into what was planned as a 2-week study, the mock prison guards began displaying aggressive and sadistic behavior towards the prisoners. By the second day, some prisoners resorted to blocking their cells with mattresses, leading the guards to respond by breaking in, stripping the prisoners, and confiscating their bedding. Within 3 days, one prisoner had to be removed due to severe depression, and 3 others also exhibited signs of distress. Consequently, the experiment was terminated. I wonder why. It seemed to be going so well. Number 2 is Dr. Shiro Ishii's unit. Dr. Shiro's transformation from a Japanese microbiologist to an...
In the week that Japan surrendered in 1945, Japanese Army Unit 731 was busy destroying evidence of its work.
Victorious figure during the final years of World War II is a dark chapter in history. He rose to the position of Surgeon General, but left behind a trail of blood and immense human suffering. Dr. Ishii was in charge of Unit 731, an experimental prisoner of war camp where horrifying experiments took place. At Unit 731, thousands of victims were subjected to ghastly tests, including being shot, enduring frostbitten limbs, and placed in high-pressure chambers or centrifuges. Some were even dehydrated nearly to the point of death and had their organs partially removed. After that, they were cruelly sewn back together, all in the name of so-called science. In addition to these horrors, Dr. Ishii ordered the release of plague bombs on Chinese cities to test the effectiveness of a planned attack on the western coast of the United States. And unfortunately, we've reached number 1. In the 1960s, Dr. Eugene Sanger from the University of Cincinnati led experiments reportedly funded by the Pentagon involving higher radiation levels on cancer patients.
But the Department of Defense was very interested in the effects of total body irradiation. Because if there's a nuclear war and people get irradiated, are they going to be able to function?
Many of whom were underprivileged and of color. Some critics argue these experiments were conducted to observe how soldiers might react in nuclear warfare. However, Sanger claimed the goal was to study radiation's effects on advanced cancer patients. Shockingly, the majority of patients had severe negative reactions to the 100 rads of total body irradiation and became extremely sick shortly after. For context, a regular X-ray exposes patients to less than 1 rad, and by 1972, it's believed that all of Sanger's patients had passed away. And around the same time, Dr. Carl Heller is also reported to have conducted experiments using 650 rads of radiation on the testicles of US prisoners, primarily out of curiosity. So yeah, there you have it folks. Which one did you think was the most brutal and absolutely terrifying? Let us know in the comments below. Also, consider liking and subscribing to the channel if you haven't, and share the video with your friends. But until next time, we really appreciate you checking out the video as always, and well, I guess we'll see you later.